Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the MBA annual science lecture. It is, although I'm in my back bedroom, I know it's a beautiful sunny day here in Plymouth, and my virtual background it's exactly the same in Plymouth right now. So it's a great pleasure to welcome the speaker, Nick Hardman-Mountford, somebody I've known for, oh, he's just popped up on my screen. Hi, Nick. Somebody I've known for a long time, and actually we go way back to Warwick days when I think you were doing your PhD, and I was a postdoc back at the University of Warwick many years ago. Nick actually is very familiar to everybody in Plymouth. Really, he worked at the Plymouth Marine Laboratory for about 12 years between 2000 and 2012, before moving over to Australia, where he worked with CSIRO in Perth or between 2012 and 2017. A large part of Nick's research, he's an internationally recognized leader in the fields of satellite remote sensing and ocean carbon dynamics, and he's sort of well known, particularly for his work in pioneering satellite-based monitoring of phytoplankton community structure, and something we know a lot about in Plymouth. But of course, in 2018, he moved over to the Commonwealth Secretariat, and where Nick is a diplomat and marine scientist working in ocean climate and resource governance and multilateral development with a strong focus on sustainable blue economies. He's head of oceans and natural resources at the Commonwealth Secretariat, where he leads the technical advisory team delivering Commonwealth Blue Charter initiative and technical assistance projects on ocean governance and natural resources reform in Commonwealth countries. And today, Nick is going to be talking about the Commonwealth Blue Charter, from words to action. And just before the talk starts, just a little bit of housekeeping in terms of, if you want to ask questions, if you use the question and answer function, the Q&A function, or you can raise your hand. You can ask questions at any time during Nick's talk, or at the end of the talk, you can raise your hand, and or your virtual hand anyway, and we can sort of bring you on, and you can actually ask the question yourself. And we also, something that's a little bit different, we have, for those who are hard of hearing, we have a transcription service, and the link to that is in the chat function. So if you want to have a look at that, you're welcome to it. Okay, Nick, and I shall leave it over to you. Are you actually doing it live, or is this a recording?
No, this is live, Willie.
Oh, it is live. All right. So anything could go.
Exactly. So who knows where this is going to go today? But thanks for the introduction. And also, I did actually work at the Marine Biological Association as well back in the day. So very familiar with the Plymouth crowd. If you just bear with me one moment while I work the technology and share my screen, or share the right screen, hopefully. And is that okay? Can you see that, Willie?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, great. So thank you for inviting me to give this annual science talk to the Marine Biological Association. It's an honor to give it. It's, I think, going to be a slightly unusual one because it's not primarily a science talk. I'm actually going to be talking much more about how to apply science to sustainable development. And I wanted to give this talk because when I moved from CSIRO to the Commonwealth, part of my rationale for doing so was I wanted the science I was doing to see how it was making a difference in the world and how it could make more of a difference in the world. I sort of felt that there's often a barrier I was hitting with getting the science that I'd done into action for helping countries and communities to address the challenges that the ocean is facing and they are facing. So this talk is, first of all, for the many esteemed fellows and members of the MBA, to let you know that your science really is heard, is applied, and is making a difference. And for the young scientists, the students, the early career researchers, to help you get an insight into the pathways by which your science can really make a difference and achieve the ends that I'm sure you're hoping it will. So the Commonwealth Blue Charter, I'm going to tell you what that's all about in a minute, from words to action. And just going to move on now. Okay, so I love this map of the world. This is the Spillhouse projection, and it puts the ocean at the center and really shows how we have one ocean on this planet. In fact, when I look at this map, it reminds me of the line from Pablo Neruda's poem, The Open Sea, that says, "The piece of the sand that encircles a world." The view of our ocean is critical to how we act on the ocean. We have one shared ocean, and it covers more than 70% of the planet. It provides 95% of the life-supporting environment on the planet and is vital to the survival of every one of us. And yet there are a variety of ways we perceive and discuss the ocean. Most of them valid, most of them important, yet sometimes diverging. So what I want to focus on today is how, by bridging this range of perspectives, by bringing countries, sectors, and disciplines together, we can gain a shared holistic perspective to help in addressing our shared ocean challenges. And there's essentially three overarching lenses through which the ocean is viewed that I want to highlight that the Blue Charter is bringing together. And these are the scientific, the political, and the economic. The scientific lens is one we're all familiar with, and would probably all in this audience view as our point of truth on the status of the ocean. It's where we draw from to explain why the climate crisis is also an ocean crisis, a message we took very strongly to COP26 a couple of weeks ago. And the importance of the ocean in climate change. And it's great to see that that has now been recognized in the COP text, in the Glasgow Climate Pact. It's the science that tells us that more than 90% of the excess heat in the climate system has been taken up by the ocean. And it's fueling more frequent severe tropical cyclones and hurricanes. The marine heat waves are becoming more frequent and severe. And at least half of all coral reefs have been devastated by bleaching events from ocean heating within the past 30 years. It's the science that tells us that the carbon dioxide we're putting in the atmosphere is being taken up by the ocean, that 25% of the emissions each year are going into the ocean, and 30% of the total emissions since the start of the Industrial Revolution have gone into the ocean, which has driven down the ocean pH, increased hydrogen ions by about 30%. It's causing acidification and disruption to organisms and ecosystems. It's the science that tells us about the changes in ocean properties that cause shifts in species populations in fish, reducing the global catch potential in communities that depend highly on seafood, and the risks they face to nutritional health and food security. And it's the science of sea level rise that tells us the global mean sea level has already risen by about 15 centimeters. And sea level rise is currently rising more than twice as fast and will further accelerate, reaching up to 1.1 meters in 2100. The IPCC reports have documented these findings. And you know, that they are, so many ways, that the truth we go to as scientists, the evidence base. Science tells us the climate crisis is not the only ocean crisis as well. There's many other problems the ocean is facing. According to the FAO, over 90% of the world's fish stocks are used up, either fully exploited or overexploited or depleted. Actually, earlier this week, the Mindrew Foundation launched their Global Fishing Index, which reckons that about 50% of stocks are actually overexploited and 10% are on the brink of collapse. And really importantly, 52% of the global catch is from stocks that lack sufficient data to determine if they're sustainable or not. So there's gaps in the science as well. Plastic pollution as well. You know, Plymouth has done a huge amount of work on plastic pollution. There's up to 200 million tons of plastic waste that plague the marine environment, increasing at a rate of 5 to 12 million tons per year. 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic in our ocean, which equates to 46,000 pieces every square kilometer. And the research to understand the impacts of this on organisms and ecosystems is critical. But there's another lens through which the ocean is viewed. And this is what I'm calling the political one. It's probably more familiar to the policy community. It's the commitments and international agreements that governments make. What have governments signed up to? And are these commitments being implemented? Is progress being made? The UN Convention on the Law of the Sea underpins so many activities on the ocean. And then you have sub-authorities off that, from like the International Seabed Authority, which is governing deep seabed mining. You've got the Convention on Biological Diversity and coming up for renewal of its post-2020 targets next year. We have the Port State Measures Agreement trying to sort of regulate fisheries practices in port to overcome illegal, unregulated and unreported fishing. There's the Antarctic Treaty Agreement and the negotiations that are going on how we govern the high seas and biodiversity in the high seas in the Intergovernmental Conference on Marine Biodiversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, or BBNJ as it's called. And coming up very shortly, the debate at the WTO and the negotiations on eliminating harmful fisheries subsidies. These are really, you know, critical things to solve for the ocean as well, but coming from a very different perspective, often from the scientists. And the Sustainable Development Goals are something all countries have signed up to. That they are the aspiration that by 2030 we can overcome these major challenges to humanity. On the ocean, the ocean SDG is SDG 14, life below water. It's got these various targets that countries have committed to achieve and so far have not met. We know that this view is not detached from science, but integrates it. If you look at target 14A, the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development is really based around this target: increased scientific knowledge, research and technology for ocean health. And I'm sure many of you are getting involved with that UN Decade. So science and the political can work together. What's the third lens? The third one is around blue growth in the ocean economy. It's the economic lens, which brings the language of finance and business to the ocean. Because our ocean drives much global economic activity. It carries around 80% of global trade by volume, for example, through maritime transport, which connects us all. 32% of the hydrocarbons extracted for energy come from the ocean. It provides for tourism in almost 200 countries and territories. In 2020, around 11 billion tons of goods were loaded in ports worldwide, and goods and services provided by coastal and marine environments to the global economy have been valued at a staggering $24 trillion per year. So the contribution of the global ocean economy has been projected to grow to more than 3 trillion by 2030, providing more than 40 million jobs worldwide. In some cases, this lens, the focus of this lens has been purely on exploitation But more recently, there's been a growing awareness of the value of nature and its services for tackling our sustainability challenges and building the case to invest in a sustainable ocean. It may help to contrast these three lenses using the example of marine plastic pollution. Through the scientific lens, we see the problem and the possible technological solutions. The political lens bans single-use plastics and calls for a legally binding agreement to tackle the problem. And the economic lens both builds the investment case for waste management solutions and articulates the potential loss of economic value from natural systems due to pollution. And what this tells me is that if we're to stand a chance of addressing these ocean sustainability challenges, then we need to bring these perspectives together. And this is what the Commonwealth Blue Charter has been seeking to do. So let's talk a bit about the Commonwealth. Some of you may be familiar with what the modern Commonwealth is, others may not. So just to sort of set the scene, the Commonwealth is 54 countries now. It's 72 years old, the modern Commonwealth. It was set up in 1949 by the London Declaration, which calls it an association of free and equal members freely cooperating in the pursuit of peace, liberty, and progress. And the membership is determined by a charter of principles, which all the countries that join up to it are assessed against and agree to. And so from this original 8 countries, which really got together not in the sense that they were colonies, but it was when they'd gained their independence, and they didn't just want to retain the connection with the UK, they wanted to retain their connection with each other. And so they formed this modern Commonwealth. And that has grown as more countries have gained independence and joined the Commonwealth, but also through countries that had never had any historical connection with the UK. So, for example, Rwanda and Mozambique. So really, the Commonwealth is open to all countries that adhere to the Charter of the Commonwealth and the principles within that. And the ocean is of huge importance to the Commonwealth. Out of our 54 countries, 47 have a marine coastline. And about 35% of the world's national waters lie within the Commonwealth. Within those waters, we have 45% of the world's coral reefs in 37 of our member countries. And that includes the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, but also part of the Mesoamerican Reef off Belize, which is the second biggest barrier reef in the world. We have 8 of the 20 largest marine protected areas in the world in the Commonwealth, including the Mare Moana of the Cook Islands, which is the largest designated marine managed area. The whole exclusive economic zone of the Cook Islands has been set aside as the Mare Moana. Cooperation is in the nature of Commonwealth countries, and so we see that the first agreement to co-manage a shared outer continental shelf, and I think it's probably still the only agreement actually, was signed between Mauritius and Seychelles over the Saya de Mala Bank area, which also captures one of the largest seagrass meadows in the world. So if we want to see what the Commonwealth Ocean looks like on a map, here it is. You can see it spreads through all ocean basins, across all continents, and there's a lot of little dots in the middle of the ocean, which show the number of islands we have in the Commonwealth. Indeed, islands are a key component of our membership. We have 25 of the world's small island developing states, which is about 2/3 of the world's small island developing states are in the Commonwealth. But we also like to refer to them, and they like to refer to themselves as large ocean states, because when we look at the amount of ocean they have relative to land, it is huge. If we take the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and all the states within that, their combined land area is about 3,500 kilometers squared. And their regional waters are 100 times that, 350,000 kilometers squared. The Maldives land area, it's a tiny 298 kilometers squared, but its EEZ is nearly 1 million kilometers squared, 3,000 times the size of its land. And if we go to Kiribati in the Central Pacific, it has a land area of only 811 kilometers squared, spread over 3 island chains. But those 3 island chains span all 4 hemispheres of the planet. And they're from east to west, the distance is equivalent to the continental US. So you know, their EEZ is more than 3.4 million kilometers squared. That's more than 4,000 times their land area. These are large ocean states. And so Commonwealth countries came to us in 2017 and said, we want to do something on the ocean. So the UN Ocean Conference, led by Fiji and some other small island states, large ocean states. And we listened to Commonwealth countries about what they wanted. They said, we have all these ocean commitments. It's more than any of us can achieve on our own. But if we work together, we can implement them. But we don't need more commitments. We need to start taking action. And so the Commonwealth Blue Charter was drafted, consulted, and put to the heads of government within a record time of 10 months and unanimously adopted in April 2018 in London. And this is a photo of the heads of government at that time. What does the Blue Charter say? What's the commitment in it? So to summarize, first of all, it highlights the value of the many global commitments that countries have made. It recognizes that much more work still needs to be done. And then there's these 3 key elements within it. Firstly, the agreement to cooperate with one another, that no country can achieve its commitments on its own. It commits to taking a principled and science-based approach, which is consistent with the Charter of the Commonwealth. And it invites Commonwealth member countries to come forward as Commonwealth Blue Charter champions to lead or engage with action groups. So, and finally, there's a mandate for the Commonwealth Secretariat to help establish these action groups and a plan of action. And this is quite a different multilateral environmental agreement to many others out there. Because some of the things we did in establishing it were quite different. Firstly, we started with countries' needs and listened to them. So they set the agenda on what the key elements of that charter were going to be. And cooperation was number 1. We based it on the shared principles of the Charter of the Commonwealth. So these were principles that countries had already agreed to. And by putting a blue lens over it, saying, how does this apply to the ocean? They were able to find agreement in the way to move forward. The prioritization and actions are also led by countries, not by the Secretariat, through the action groups. And I'll come on to that more in a minute. And it was adopted unanimously, as those of us who've been following the negotiations at COP26 know, getting unanimous agreement is not easy. So this shows the level of ambition by countries and the level of commitment to taking action on the countries. Really, the ambition is from the countries, it's owned by the countries, and it's championed by the countries. And so if we have our one shared ocean and our shared values, we can take shared action. What are these action groups then that have been established? 10 action groups championed by 16 countries. And they've been running for about 3 years now. Some of them too, because they formed a little later. They're starting to make progress. The first one on the list here is Coral Reef Protection and Restoration, co-championed by Australia, Belize, and Mauritius. Then we've got Mangrove Ecosystems and Livelihoods, championed by Sri Lanka. Marine Plastic Pollution, otherwise known as the Commonwealth Clean Ocean Alliance, co-championed by the United Kingdom and Vanuatu. Ocean and Climate Change, championed by Fiji. Ocean Acidification, championed by New Zealand. Marine Protected Areas, championed by Barbados and Seychelles. And Ocean Observations, championed by Canada. Then Sustainable Aquaculture, championed by Cyprus. Cyprus, Sustainable Blue Economy, championed by Antigua and Barbuda and Kenya, and Sustainable Coastal Fisheries, championed by Kiribati and the Maldives. And if we look at that on a map, where the distribution of these champion countries, we see many of them, well, first of all, they are spread across the whole Commonwealth, across the whole world. And secondly, that many of them are our large ocean states who really feel that sense of stewardship for the ocean and have stepped forward to champion these causes. So what is an action group? It's really where countries and partner organizations can work together as family and friends. The family are the members, the Commonwealth countries, and the friends are the partners. That can be academia and research organizations, it can be NGOs, it can be private industry, it can be philanthropy or the investment community. So whoever has something to offer to tackling these shared challenges is welcome to get involved with the action groups. Because the countries are setting the agenda, each action group is slightly varied in its approaches. They each bring something different to it, but they're supported by the Secretariat, and we help them with convening meetings, knowledge exchanges, training, as well as developing their plans of action and trying to bring the partnerships together that are needed to support the actions of the action groups. So on this slide, you can see some of the logos of some of the formal partnerships we've signed. There's a lot more informal partnerships as well. In fact, there's 6 formal partnerships we signed in the first 3 years, over 30,000 visitors to the website, 19 promotional videos. This is sort of out of our interim report about what's been achieved so far, particularly, you know, the connection of government officials to information through our knowledge hub, running knowledge exchange webinars and hybrid events. We had 10 at COP26 over the last couple of weeks. Developing thematic toolkits and training courses, and also bringing that information together. So we've got an external training opportunities database that's searchable with 215 training opportunities for countries there. We've got 115 online funder profiles compiled in our ocean funder database worth over 126 million. So we're trying to connect countries with these sources of information that can really enable them to take the next steps in taking action. And another way to look at it is all the people we've engaged with over this time, particularly, you know, during the last couple of years of COVID, where we've been able to connect remotely and bring communities together. So that's a bit about the Blue Charter and where we've got to so far. And just wanted to sort of now think about opportunities for research, for science and interdisciplinary research to get involved with the action groups. And so if we think about the action groups in 4 areas, there's 3 that deal with human pressures: climate change, ocean acidification, plastic pollution. There's 3 that deal with restoration and protection on coral reefs, mangroves, and marine protected areas. And there's 3 that deal with sustainable use of the ocean: sustainable aquaculture, sustainable coastal fisheries, and sustainable blue economy. And then there's 1 that's sort of cross-cutting to all these, which deals with the evidence, and that is ocean observations. If we think about the area of human pressures, it's really important, you know, and a lot of the knowledge that has come through so far and that I sort of talked about at the beginning of this has really been about understanding and mitigating the impact of these human pressures. And where we want to take this is looking at scalable solutions and how they relate to policy and how policy can help and the policy frameworks can help create the environment to scale these solutions. Key example of where this is needed is blue carbon. There's been a lot of research on the science of blue carbon going on, and there's now sort of development of carbon markets and the ability to have tradable quotas, but really getting the policy frameworks in place and making sure that the right governance arrangements are there is critical. And so we're looking at how to bring these elements together. Restoration and protection, that is often sold on its value for ecological and climate resilience. And that's really important. And again, this is an area where the science makes a huge difference. The fact that science has been able to show the value of mangroves in mitigating storm surges and enhancing fish nurseries, in the value of coral reefs in providing coastal protection, the value of seagrasses in as nursery grounds and taking up carbon dioxide, and also that the science that showed that the having sort of more large predators in the ecosystem improves the carbon sequestration potential of that ecosystem. These studies that come through really help build the case for ecological and climate resilience and restoration and protection of marine ecosystems. But as we're in a changing world, the management of those needs to be adaptive. So we also need to understand what is required to make sure that the way they're governed, the way they're managed, understands how to be adaptive, what that adaptation means, where they might go in the future, what the flexibility that's built in is, and that the plans support communities and livelihoods. There's billions of people around the world rely directly on the ocean, and if we take only the ecological view and forget the people, we'll never achieve the objective. This is about people, and so we really need the research to involve the socioeconomists who can bring in that community and livelihood perspective into the research and bring them together. When we look at sustainable use, there's been many great sort of innovations coming out recently on using the ocean. We need much more of these for ocean products. If you take seaweed, for example, the number of developments in using seaweed for fertilizer, for plastic alternatives, for food. The seaweed industry has potential to just grow, and it already is doing massively. But in these innovations, what we need as well are innovative business models for sustainable marine products and services. So the pathway to market is also there. And so this is bringing together the science with the innovation thinking that really takes it through to get that investment into the new business models. Business models for marine protected areas as well, how communities can actually make an income from protecting those ecosystems. And an exciting area that we've been looking into is working with the insurance industry and the investment they bring, because the job of insurance really is to match risk with capital, and they hold a lot of capital to do that. And so when we're looking at ocean risk and building resilience, we need to bring together the capital with that. And so there's a new partnership called the Ocean Risk Resilience Action Alliance, which we've joined, which is seeking to bring together the insurance and investment industries with the science and communities trying to take action, and looking at ways that together we can build that resilience. And all of these are underpinned by the need for evidence, ocean observations to support decision making. And actually, just say a bit more about that. One of the things that really has become important here is that the data collected is transformed into a usable set of information or intelligence. So what I'm calling actionable data. when we're developing solutions, we need to think about who has to make a decision using this information and what do they need it for. Is it an operational decision? Is it policy formulation? Is it regulatory enforcement or public interest? So, for example, Global Phishing Watch, this is a map of one of their products. On the screen at the moment, it just looks like a pretty colored map, but when you delve into the information, you can see what that's showing. Some of their maps are there purely for public interest. They are showing the public of what is going on in the ocean, where the transshipments are happening, where fishing is happening in areas it shouldn't be. And that is to drive transparency and public awareness and public pressure to change those practices. Other elements of their work are targeted directly to governments who want to use that information for regulatory enforcement. And so targeting the information that they get into who's going to be using it has been really important. Another partner we're working with is the Alan Coral Atlas, and they've been kind enough to let us set up a Commonwealth portal for the Alan Coral Atlas. This is a phenomenal piece of work. They've taken high-resolution satellite imagery from Planet. It was funded by Vulcan because the late Paul Allen really had a passion for coral reefs and wanted to map all the coral reefs in the world. And so they've done that. And it's now been taken over by Arizona State University, Greg Asner's group, to run this. And they've mapped every shallow tropical coral reef system in the world from satellite, made that data freely available, have now got a bleaching product they put over the top so countries can get an indicator of when bleaching's happening. It's just been a huge effort, and so we're making this available to our countries, making them aware of it, trying to find opportunities to partner as well, because obviously satellite data relies on ground truthing, and if countries have some capacity or can build capacity to take the in-water measurements to ground truth this data, you know, that becomes a really involved partnership of building science capacity and developing these products which benefit everybody. Some of the areas it's been used so far are for developing marine protected areas and marine spatial plans. In Sri Lanka, the Kayan-Kearney Reef area was designated as a national park based on the Alan Coral Atlas habitat data. So it really is making an impact by getting this data into the hands of countries. We've partnered with the Necron Mission as well. I'm not sure how many of you know about Necron, but it's a private research organization, although closely linked to the University of Oxford. They've done missions in Bermuda, Seychelles, and now moving on to the Maldives. And their marine science focus is around understanding biodiversity in the mesopelagic. But their method is very much about supporting countries to be able to take action on their ocean with this data. And so when they go into a country, they work very closely with the government. They work with the governance frameworks in the country to make sure their data is going to be used. So for example, in Seychelles, it was for supporting the Marine Spatial Plan, which allowed the Seychelles to protect 30% of its marine protected area 10 years ahead of the proposed new global target. They bring public engagement. So the voice of these countries is also heard. In the Seychelles, they took the then president, Danny Four, down in one of their submarines to broadcast a message to the world on Sky Breakfast News. It was heard by millions of people all over the world. Really, you know, that sort of public engagement really raises the profile of the plight of a lot of what these countries are going through, who are on the front line of climate change and ocean impacts. And they build capacity. They've worked with the scientists in government in those countries, trained them, given them Oxford fellowships, but they go back, they engage more in the scientific writing process, in the analysis of the data, not just taking them out to do the survey work. These scientists remain in government in those countries and take those skills. The data is retained by the country, owned by the country, and continues to be used by them. So it's a really engaged partnership of co-creation and co-development of the science. And so this is, you know, a model we really like and work with Necron on, and are looking for more partnerships that do this. And talked about innovation, and innovation is really important, but a lot of the innovation is happening in areas where people are well resourced, and a lot of the ideas of what needs to happen can come from those who are actually on the front line of the challenges of climate and ocean change across the Commonwealth. So we set up this hackathon this year with the satellite applications catapult to bring satellite-based technologies to bear on this problem, and to source really, really early stage ideas from across the Commonwealth. We ended up with 30 teams competing against each other, and ran a training course through July and August, which provided them with both the technical insights into the use of satellite data, but also innovation training, how to develop business models and so on. And this was done in partnership, not just with the Satellite Applications Catapult, but with our sponsors and other partners, Planet, Maxar, Amazon Web Services, and Deloitte. And they were also able to provide cash for the prizes, but also a lot of in-kind support in terms of availability of data, compute time, access to servers, and their mentorship and experience in the process. So it was really, you know, a great start in terms of this hackathon world, and trying to bring these early stage solutions together. And we ended up with 6 finalists and a winner and 2 runners up. And the winner was actually partnered with Plymouth Marine Laboratory in their final solution as well. So again, you know, this is really trying to get these ideas from out of the Commonwealth and build the partnerships that can take things forward. Another thing we've got involved with is the Earthshot Prize. Many of you would have seen this on television. Earthshot has been fantastic at raising the profile of the ability of innovation to solve these global challenges. We are part of the Global Alliance Partnership and nominators for the Ocean Earthshot, and really pleased to have been sort of working with Coral Vita, who received the Revive Our Ocean Earthshot Prize this year. And so this is a picture that we just before, we knew that they were finalists. The Secretary General was out in Bahamas and was able to sort of visit their facility and see what they're doing in terms of this intensive onshore coral farming to scale up coral restoration. So where are we going next? Finance is a key issue, and getting the Green Climate Fund financing out into countries is not easy. We have something called the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, which has been working over the last 4 years or so, 5 years, to get that funding into the hands of countries, and by putting climate finance advisors in different country governments, training people up, working to make sure those proposals hit the mark and get the financing. But only 2% of the Green Climate Fund's financing to date has gone to ocean-related projects. So what we've just sort of announced with some UK funding is to put an ocean climate finance advisor into the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub to help the climate finance advisors in the countries to consider how to bring ocean-based projects to the Green Climate Fund. We're also going to pilot some coastal climate risk rapid assessments starting this week. This is in partnership with Aura, who I mentioned earlier, and the Stimson Centre, using their Corvi ocean and climate risk assessment. And we're also piloting with UNEP some blue economy rapid readiness assessments in countries as well. The Marine Protected Areas Action Group is going to be holding a Pan-Commonwealth dialogue on 30 by 30, this proposed commitment of 30% of the ocean to be protected by 2030. and we've already got 30 countries signed up to that. We want to bring all the countries together to discuss not making a political commitment, but if they were to make it, who would be there to support them? How would they be supported? How could they make those changes in a way that is not going to overstretch their capacity in the country? And so those are really important questions for countries to consider. And something I'm really excited about is we are going to be launching a Blue Charter project incubator to get these early stage pilot projects off the ground with countries, look for partnerships and to leverage other investments to really allow countries to take the lead in developing the projects they want. So that's my summary of where we have got to with the Commonwealth Blue Charter. Hopefully you've seen areas where you feel you can get involved. It's shown how science is really important in combining with the political and the economic considerations to drive the action on the ocean we need. If you want further information, please go to our website, and there's sign up for our newsletter. There's children's books there as well, training courses, case studies, all kinds of things. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Nick. That was a fantastic talk, actually, and I was really taken by many of the concepts and lenses that you talked about. And I was certainly taken a narrative that I've heard so often now is this sort of one ocean and the large ocean states, and thinking about the ocean rather than land is the valuable part, particularly in terms of the economics and particularly in terms of science. And I think you'll have got a lot of interest in that. I've got a ton of questions myself, but I see there's quite a few in the chat. We're only going to have about 10 minutes for questions, so I'm going to just pull up. So right, I'll start with Matt. So, and if people want to raise their hands with anything, in fact, I'm going to ask Matt. I'm going to ask people, if you don't mind, just to come on and ask the question. Make it better than listening to me, I guess. Matt, do you want to come on? Can that happen? No. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll just ask. Hi, Nick. Kiribati is planning to open up its marine protected area for tuna fishing to increase revenue generation in the short term. How does this fit with the long-term goals for sustainable development goals and commitments to protection, e.g. 30 by 30? Does the Commonwealth Secretariat have a view on this?
Don't start with the easy ones, do you?
Sorry, Nick, this is Matt here. So yeah,
hi Matt. Yeah, I've got the question. Kiribati, is a very large ocean state, but it's also one of the least developed countries in the world. They set up the Phoenix Islands protected area probably about 30 years ago. It's had a lot of science done. It's really sort of been a good model of a large marine protected area. But when they signed up to that, they lost out a lot on revenue from tuna fisheries, and there was supposed to be a mechanism set up to replace that. And so, these are the difficult decisions that countries have to make in balancing the needs of their populations in the immediate term, those who are living often at subsistence level, with the longer term goals, which they all believe in. They understand these are Pacific Islanders who value the ocean. But it's this balance of the near term and the long term. And so I feel that it's not decided. There's a debate going on nationally on that. It's going through Parliament, and but I feel if we in the global North feel strongly about this, then how are our governments acting to support Kiribati with the needs they have to make the long-term decision by relieving the short-term pressures. We've got to work together on this. We can't just criticize countries for decisions they make when we're not doing anything to help. So,
great answer. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks. So the question from Jennifer Lay, are data collected through programs such as Necton open access to allow multiple applications and uses?
I believe they are. They're certainly open to the countries, but I think they are opened up. They have a database called Octopus, which is based on public understanding of science. So I believe that is open, and happy to connect you with Necton if you'd like to know more.
Excellent, thanks. One from Neri Blower. What advice would you give to students currently studying marine biology and related subjects who would like to get involved with the Commonwealth Blue Charter in the future?
So start, firstly, you know, if you're an early career scientist, focus on your science, make sure you're doing the best science you can. We need hard-hitting, high-impact science to make a difference. That doesn't necessarily need to be in Nature journals or science, but it does need to sort of really also cross that bridge to what the application is. And so as well as writing your papers, start thinking about writing policy briefs when you get those research results and understanding what the implications are. Also think about them through those three lenses. Don't just think about the science, but think about the economic considerations and the political considerations around those as well. That'll really help you in writing the policy briefs and looking for the larger opportunities for cooperation where your science becomes part of a bigger program that is moving on to affect some level of outcome and change rather than the science being an end in itself. So that would be my advice.
Excellent, thank you. A question from Andrew Melville. No, that's a good one. What are you going to do? Oh, don't move. What are you going to do to reduce fossil fuel damage to the oceans in terms of development and all sources of pollution?
That was the big question in Glasgow, and we certainly were there taking the views of our member countries, particularly a lot of the small states expressing their views on that. We were taking the message of the ocean there, and it's really positive to see the ocean now anchored firmly in the Glasgow Climate Pact. That's taken several years to get to that point. The only way to stop emissions getting into the ocean is to stop emitting. And so one of the other things in my team is working on is sustainable energy transitions for the Commonwealth, really starting to help countries move towards sustainable energy. A lot of the focus in the world is around industrialized countries, but actually if you can unlock energy in islands, then you unlock islands for a whole range of other SDG deliverables as well. So we've just launched at COP Small Island Developing State business cases for renewable energy and had an investor roundtable for Seychelles.
Excellent, thanks. So there was a question I had. I was just going to pick up. I mean, you had a nice figure of 126 million in funding that's in one of your slides that has been committed to this. Is that?
That's not been committed. That is countries are needing investment to develop their directions. You know, and getting access to that funding is hard, particularly when it's so disparate and nobody knows where it is. So we just did a simple piece of work, which was looking at all the different sort of ocean philanthropies and funders out there and pulling a database together, which puts it all in one place. It was that simple.
Right. Okay. Excellent. There was a comment from Matt Frosty that MBA is currently developing policy briefs as a new way of actively engaging with a lot of these issues. So it's lot of the work that we do on the policy side. So yeah, if anybody's interested in that, just get in touch with Matt. I'm going to take one last question here from Jane Richards. Fantastic work. You mentioned being at COP26. How is this work being integrated and influencing those broader discussions? And is there a way to share the ways you have managed to translate policy into action?
So two parts to that question. Firstly, yeah, I mean, COP26, we had numerous action groups represented. If you look at all those action groups have some link to climate change, and either in terms of the impacts or the solutions or both. So we were able to bring those messages there. Really, what our key message was: the climate crisis is an ocean crisis, but ocean action is climate action. And it was really encouraging to see that the ocean text did finally get through and get adopted there. In terms of how to really get involved with the way we've sort of been translating the science into policy, I think just get involved as a partner in the action group. So sort of get in touch, see what you can offer through your research or your organization. And countries just need all the help they can get. So if and they don't have much to give back at the moment, but what you're giving back to is to the world. And so if you've got a way to share that, that would be great.
Excellent. Thank you. And we've only got time. I know there's a few more questions in there, but I would think there's one last question from Jill Ryder. Fabulous to hear. Actions, not words. It is time to make things happen. Quite right. And what can we do to build our membership from marine biologists in the Commonwealth? We've got a lot to offer them, and all our members would benefit from their expertise and networks. So I guess the question there is, how do we build a membership from within the Commonwealth, do you think?
Yeah, well, and you were sort of hosting the World Congress of Marine Stations, weren't you, last week? And
that's right. Yep.
There's a phenomenal community from around the world there, and so starting to again think about not just how do we do our research in this country or in one place, but how do we build capacity in other countries in the way we do that, build those partnerships. Some of that can be exchange programs and bringing students in, but also really we don't need more students necessarily being trained from other countries and then getting jobs, postdocs in the US, in the UK, and leaving those countries behind. We need them to be embedded in government in there and in research institutions and taking those skills home, being engaged within their countries and enabled to stay in their countries and still develop the marine science capacity. So
I think that's a fabulous point to finish on, and I think these partnerships that actually help empower the countries and empower the scientists within these countries to sort of work within these countries is so important. It's the kind of fundamental basis of capacity development. So we've run out of time now, so it just remains for me to say thank you very much on behalf of the Marine Biological Association. It's been an incredibly engaging talk. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've written tons of notes. I might actually pick up with you a few things afterwards, Nick. But it's been great to have you along. And I meant to say right at the start, Nick is also one of our newest FMBAs, Fellow of the Marine Biological Association. So congratulations on that, and thank you again. And stay in touch. Thank you. And I guess we could all do a kind of round, a virtual round of applause for Nick, or maybe you all switch your cameras on and do a proper round of applause. So. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. That was excellent.
Yeah. Thanks.
Brilliant talk.
Thank you. Willie, could I? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hello, yeah, it's Maya here. Just to add, just for our attendees, there are a couple of links on the chat section there. So if you wanted to have a look at those, there's one that gives the link to the next part of the AGM, and then there's another link which is to an Alchemare survey for members, which would be really grateful if anybody would like to fill in there as well. So that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. And we've got we have the AGM coming up in 15 minutes. And that'll be open to members of the MBA. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Where are you actually based right now? Where are